Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
Welcome everybody that's here and watching at home to the Tuesday, February 18th informational meeting. We'll call this meeting to order and start with City Council open discussion. Anybody? Councilor Staley?
I just wanted to put out a reminder that we're having our budget working session next Wednesday at 2:30. And I talked with our budget analyst, Dave Bixler. He said he's had a few people throw some input out there, but if you have some things you'd like to discuss, I think, Dave, would you come up here for a minute?
Dave Bixler, budget analyst for the City Council.
We're doing this in such a way that people could just throw things out ad lib at the time too. Is that correct? Or how are we going to?
If they provide before, that would be great, but we can also, as we did last year, just have ideas thrown out and then I'll just take a roster of those and send those out afterwards.
And then and correct me, Mr. Chair, if I'm wrong, but I think he's going to compile things and then we're going to have it presented at Informational. Was that your thought?
We're pretty much following exactly what we did last year, and I think that's what we did, I believe.
And Dave said we have to, the city would like this all, the input presented by the end of March.
Yes, last year, Director Pritchett had said that the end of March 22nd was the date that they had their deadline for other than regular line items.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? All right, we'll move into our presentations for the day. I'll start out with an update on the coronavirus. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Council. Sandy Frentz, Public Health Manager. Director Franken asked that I come before you today and do just a quick update on coronavirus and some of the health department activities as it relates to this virus. So I thought I would start with a little bit of a situation update for you. First and foremost, there are no confirmed cases of coronavirus 2019, which is the official name of the disease, in the state of South Dakota at this time, nor are there any persons under investigation at this time. The World Health Organization has developed a dashboard to provide a global overview of case counts and information, and as you can see on the slide before you, there's been just over 73,000 confirmed cases of this illness globally in 26 countries, 25 outside of China. Of those, 72,528, so 98.9% of the cases are in China. The other 804 cases, or 1.1%, are in the 25 countries reporting outside of China. The CDC has also developed a dashboard. They're updating that on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to report out cases within the United States. So as of yesterday, February 17th, there are 15 confirmed cases of coronavirus 2019 in the United States, residing in 7 states, those being Arizona, California, Illinois, Massachusetts, Texas, Washington, and Wisconsin. So 13 of those cases have direct travel connections to China. 2 of those cases, one in California and one in Illinois, were both close personal contacts of already confirmed cases. And the 3 most recent confirmed cases that were diagnosed in the United States were all under federal quarantine. They were in some of the repatriated transports that came back from China. And these numbers do not reflect the 14 cases that were identified on the people evacuated from the Diamond Princess cruise ship. So the public health, or the CDC, or Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, are stating that the potential for a global public health threat with this virus remains high, but at this time, the immediate risk to Americans remains low. They are saying that we can anticipate additional cases being diagnosed, but their goal, which is a multi-layered public health goal, really is focusing right now on rapid detection of illness and then rapid quarantine and isolation to prevent transmission. So I think it's important to recognize that at this time there is no virus spreading person to person across the community, or the country, sorry. So this newly emerging coronavirus 2019, is a respiratory disease, and it seems to spread very similarly to how influenza is spread. It's a droplet transmission. And while this disease does not yet meet the criteria of a pandemic, the CDC is treating it as if it could be our next potential pandemic. Likewise, so are we at local and state public health. And we've done a lot of work over the last 15 years to be able to respond to any potential pandemics. So we're really looking at this in the same way we responded to H1N1 in 2009, to Ebola in 2014, and then with our measles case in 2015. So as far as maintaining situational awareness, we know that globally this is a very fluid situation. So we are maintaining real strong partnerships with our state and federal partners in public health to maintain situational awareness. The state of South Dakota, so the South Dakota State Department of Health, would be the lead agency for investigation of any cases as well as doing contact notification. So our role in this would be to support any requests they might have for assistance within the city of Sioux Falls, just like we did with the situations I've already mentioned. And in addition to that, we're monitoring CDC guidance. They're updating it fairly regularly, whether that's for businesses, schools, healthcare entities, and making sure that our partners have that information readily available. In addition, we're focusing a lot of effort on communications, and in your packet you received a copy of one of our situation briefs. We've been issuing these rather regularly over the past several weeks. We're taking and just compiling the newest information and then sharing that across our emergency management network. So people that are getting this brief on a regular basis would include police, so our local Sioux Falls Police Department, as well as the Sheriff's Office, fire, EMS, Lincoln County and Minnehaha County Emergency Management, Metro Communications. We're sharing with healthcare agencies, schools and universities, the National Guard, public universities, the Airport Authority, Chamber of Commerce, anybody that has potential to be either impacted by or has the potential to share information as partners with us. And then we're also coordinating. So we're right now working alongside our emergency responders and healthcare entities as they maintain monitoring their levels of personal protective equipment, knowing that if there were a need for something such as masks, if we saw an outbreak in the community, that they have the resources that they would need. And so we would serve as a liaison to the state for them to access from the state stockpile of equipment. So with that, I would attempt to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for the update. Councilor Brecky.
Just a question about how a little more detail about how the virus is spread and what kind of preventative things.
So it's a respiratory illness, so it's droplet. So much like influenza, so if I were to cough or sneeze and you were to come in contact with those particles while they were in the air, or for example, they landed on a piece of paper and then you touched it and rubbed your face, for example, because your eyes and your mouth, your nose are open portals, would be a way to transmit this. So methods of preventing transmission, well, specifically with this right now would be travel, right? And the CDC is discouraging any non-necessary travel to China. But just like influenza, I would tell you, wash your hands, cover your cough, make sure that if you're ill, you stay home.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Staley?
Let's compare this to just an influenza outbreak. Is this more severe? Or is it similar?
As a virus, it's really been presenting with a range of symptoms, anywhere from just, a low-grade fever to, pneumonia, just like an influenza would be. So, I mean, it has a little bit more to do with, are you immunocompromised? Are you young? Are you old? So it's, I can't say how everybody is going to respond.
Well, and you see pictures on the news of people being sprayed down in China, it's real drastic. So I think it presents to the public the sense that it's like the plague, that they have to siphon these people into a protected area, which we don't think of that with influenza.
Right.
So it's something
and
a
right
little
now,
more serious, perhaps, if it does start to.
So right now, our public health response nationally is focusing on rapid identification and quarantine. If you come through, if you've had travel specifically in the Hubei province, or coming back from China, you are going to go into a quarantine for 14 days before you're allowed to just enter back into the community. So, our public health approach at this point is to control spread. The public health response in other countries are going to be different based on where they're at.
Sandy, what I heard you saying at the beginning is that the South Dakota Department of Health would have more of a lead if something would happen. The city of Sioux Falls Health Department will be taking their direction from the state.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Just like we did with the H1N1 or with measles. Now, at this point, we don't have a vaccine that we can provide to people to protect them from this virus. But, at this point, if we were to have a case, follow their direction, they would do the disease investigation, they would do the contact information, and then if they need assistance from us, whether that's personnel or information, we would certainly work to fill any of their requests. And then with H1N1, we had that illness over the summer, and by fall we had a vaccine developed, and so we partnered along with the State Department of Health and did mass vaccination clinics.
So if that did happen to surface in our city, the quarantine element would
Be a state-ordered quarantine.
Right, but where would that person be, in a hospital then, or would the
Well,
city have to come up with some kind of a place where people would be?
So where the person would be staying would be dependent upon how ill they are. So CDC interim guidance right now offers information for both people that would be at hospitals, in which case if they're ill enough to be in a hospital, they would be isolated, or you can be at home if you can isolate at home, which means somebody needs to be able to provide you food. You need to be able to have, a separate bedroom that you can be at so we can avoid close person-to-person contact. But there's interim guidance for either situation. Where a person would be quarantined or isolated if they're ill would be based on how ill they are.
And do you know how quickly in these other areas has it emerged?
Oh, I couldn't answer that.
You don't know. So just to reassure the public that if this would happen to come here, we are going to be ready for it.
We have response capability that we've used several times over the past number of years.
And that's why I'm so grateful you came in, just to give us I know we're getting emails about things, but it's nice to just have a public awareness for educational purposes as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else with questions?
Thank you.
All right, thanks for the presentation. Next up, we have an update on the Falls Park Design Competition. Hello there.
Good afternoon, Mike Patton, Parks and Recreation. I'm here today to present an update on the Falls Park Master Plan and talk about an idea that we're excited about going forward. Just as a reminder to the council, earlier this year we brought before you a project to revisit the master plan of Falls Park. The catalyst for that project is really the original improvements are close to 20 years old, and the area has grown. It's been planned sort of in a bubble in sort of areas in the past, and we're looking for a comprehensive vision. The park usage has increased, and a lot of the adjacent development is really moving. So that was sort of the reason for the master plan in the first place. The image you can see on your screen there shows what we envision, really what is Falls Park. And in the past, it's been largely planned in small areas. So like Falls Park West was done in a master plan, and Falls Park North was done in its own master plan. But really, when you look at Falls Park in its entirety, it spans all the way from 6th Street to the south, all the way up, to the spillway to the north, and in between the Weber and Phillips Avenue corridor. So it's a large area when you look at it in its entirety. And as the community, continues to redevelop in the area, we think it's important to take a more comprehensive approach. So the exciting idea I mentioned is a design competition. And if you're not familiar with what that is, it's an alternative design approach to, the typical master planning process where an organization will contract with multiple design professionals or design teams to create their vision and their opinion of what could happen in a space. And it's oftentimes used in sort of high-profile public planning areas. For example, Nicollet Mall in Minneapolis was a public design competition. The Riverfront in Minneapolis is a recently completed design competition that we drew a lot of inspiration from, and it's kind of why we're here today, as well as Green the City in Omaha, Nebraska. So why use a design competition? Well, first of all, it really attracts expert designers and new talents. Typically, when you go forward with a master planning process, you may have a handful of people you oftentimes work with. In a design competition, you're going to attract people that normally may not be interested in a project. It'll also, it kind of invites fresh ideas and new thinking, something that might not come out of your typical planning process. In this case, it will. We're hoping to generate a multitude of different ideas, ones that aren't just steered specifically by one person, but the creation of multiple ideas. And it really incentivizes designers to do really their best work. They're competing against their peers. The value that comes out of the competition will be higher than a typical standard process. And finally, it attracts a lot of public awareness to a project as well. So for the Falls Park Design Competition, we're really thinking of it as a two-part process. It's an ideas competition. I mentioned we want to create a lot of ideas, but it's also a specific project competition as well. So we want to generate a comprehensive vision for the entire area of Falls Park. We want to create lots of different ideas. We want to take innovative approaches to them. We want a plan that can be realistically implemented. We want to address the growing needs of our community. We really hope to build upon the existing spaces and natural features of Falls Park. It's obviously a natural wonder, and we want to take that into account going forward. We really want to investigate all possibilities and really maximize the potential of Falls Park. We hope it will become a catalyst for redevelopment of the area, and we really want the plan to ultimately inspire the community. So going forward, the different project steps will start with the formation of a project committee. And that'll be made up of a mix of, mayoral appointees, Parks and Recreation Board members, council members, city staff, and other stakeholders. And what that committee will do, it'll begin with the selection of consultants. We anticipate letting a request for proposals, but in this case, it's really a request for professional design services. It would be open to any qualified designer. You'd have to be a licensed professional in your field, whether that be an architect or landscape architect engineer. We hope to promote it nationally. We anticipate using the NRPA platform as well as the American Society of Landscape Architects and other national platforms to get the word out about this idea. The firms will be selected based on their key personnel as well as past experience, and then their tailored approach to our project and their design philosophy. We're hoping to get that out there and score that later this spring with choosing the best teams qualified to move forward. We anticipate maybe up to 4 that we would choose to move forward with the design competition itself. So how would the design competition work? First of all, the firms chosen would be given some background information, past master plans, our recently approved system master plan, historical information, past land uses, information like that. They'd be provided a stipend for their work. We're anticipating a $10,000 fee for the firms to do their competition. We also anticipate receiving way more than $10,000 in value for the service. We hope to start the project later this summer, offer about a 3 to 4 month design window to create their vision. The submittals would be due later this fall. We'd post them publicly and hope to gather some public feedback based on the different proposals submitted. And then ultimately, they would present their ideas and their plans to the project committee in the fall of 2020. And then we'd move on to choosing the winner. And the project team would score the different designs submitted based on their vision, innovation, and creativity, how practical, how feasible their plan is, how well did they activate the spaces and create recreational opportunities, as well as connectivity, both to and through the park from a physical movement standpoint, but also how well did they connect the park user to the different features, nature, art, history that's available there in the park. Ultimately, we'd assign places, first, second, third, fourth, and then publicly present the final winning design. So, after the design competition is complete, we'd compile all the different ideas from all the different proposals, and then work with the winning team on a project to compile all the different ideas organized into a final plan. We anticipate that happening a little bit later, possibly 2021. So, in summary, our goals for the design competition are really to create a comprehensive vision for the entire planning area. We hope to create a multi-layered framework for the plan. We wanted to really take a look at enhancing the social, recreational, economic, and environmental opportunities of Falls Park. We want to identify those critical connections that I mentioned. We wanted to explore all the park's physical features and natural elements. We wanted to really dive into innovative ideas, new approaches that we haven't typically done in the past. We want to estimate the short-term, long-term costs, that's both from development and ongoing maintenance of the facilities, and then prioritize that into a strategy for investment going forward. So the one thing I want to make sure and note at the end of the competition, all the intellectual property, all the ideas that are generated from all the firms selected will become ownership of the city, because we envision the final master plan probably not just being the final chosen winner of the competition, but really a collection of the best ideas organized spatially into what's best for the park. So that was a lot of words. I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Any questions? Councilor Erickson.
Thank you. Mike, have we ever done this before at the city?
Not since I've been here. I believe there's been a couple of design competitions involved with available housing, maybe in the early 2000s, but Parks and Recreation has never led a design competition here in the city.
Okay, and then my other question is, as far as will they be given, I know you said a scope they will be given, but will they be given a budgetary scope? Because I know a lot of architects that are really, really creative, but it depends on what you want to spend for that project. And so certainly we want it to be a reasonable project that we can see through and not just a grandiose plan that won't come to fruition. So if there's a budgetary component to it at all?
We're not, I guess, that far along in the process as far as setting a parameter of cost specifically, because it's a master plan. It's not tied to a specific construction project. But one of the key factors is something that's realistic and feasible for a community like Sioux Falls to invest going forward. So that's all stuff that I think we'll get to eventually, but obviously anything we do, we'd want it to be practical.
Awesome, thank you. I appreciate your presentation, and I think that this is an exciting thing to do, a little bit outside the box thinking that brings some different ideas to the table. So thank you.
Yes.
Other questions? Councilor Brecky.
Just a statement, want to applaud you for recognizing that this is kind of a one-in-a-career opportunity. Again, I had talked previously about the skyline of Sioux Falls and how it's tied, to Falls Park, and you're obviously acknowledging, the falls and Falls Park and that River Greenway, acknowledging that this is kind of a special, once in a career, once in 100-year opportunity, maybe not 100 years, but doing it this way, I think is just, really clever of you guys, and I just want you to be aware of that. I think that's pretty exciting the way you're approaching it.
Thank you.
Councilor Staley.
So Mike, first of all, when are you planning on having this selection team in place?
Sometime this spring.
Like when this spring? After the election?
I think right now, tentatively, we're thinking about hopefully getting the RFP for consultant selection out in April. So we'd have to have the committee prior to that.
See, that could be a little sticky when you got 4 council seats that could be on the docket. So then, is that just saying that you would have Counselor Erickson or Kylie would be the people on the, I mean, I think making any kind of selection right before an election, selection before an election could be, you know, presumptuous.
Well, I haven't thought that far ahead as far as exact selection for the committee members yet.
Okay.
'Cause it's a new process that we're really tackling, but thank you for that feedback.
Well, yeah, I just think it would be more, you'd have more solidity if you waited until a new council was in place, just to get their feedback. So along that same line, at the end of the day, so you've got the selection committee that will be picked by the mayor's administration, right?
I think we would work with all the different bodies to find the best committee going forward.
And then at the end of the day, is the whole proposal going to come in front of the council?
Yes, I mean, it's informational. It's an adopted master plan. It's not a construction project per se, but we want public and council and park board involvement throughout the entire process.
Because as you're when you first started to present this, I wrote down, how is this different from an RFP? When you were talking about garnering, you know, having people put their ideas forth, and one of the things we ran into problems with in the past was when we had a selection committee that was making decisions about something. Parking ramp will be the perfect example, or the golf course contract, where it's in a closed setting, and then anything that comes to the council, and I don't care who's sitting on this council in a year or two, but I think that what we want in our community now is that we want to know that all the council members get a chance to see all the information, you know, before they're asked to vote or approve on something. Does that make sense?
It does, thank you.
And so I would just make sure that we aren't doing anything in a closed manner as you proceed. The other thing, did I hear you say that each person who's going to be participating in the design competition is going to get $10,000?
Correct.
So they're not going to have to pay to participate. I mean, and could it be like 10 people, 10 companies want to do this?
Well, I think we'd get a lot of companies that want to do this. I'm hoping we get many that get turned away. Our goal is to select the best fit for the design competition, and then select in that 2 to 3, 4 firms that are best suited to go forward.
So it's going to be different levels of selection? Because you're going to put this out, when you first said this, I thought anyone who has, any entity could put forth a design.
Well, you'd have to be a licensed design professional, so you'd have to be a registered architect or registered landscape architect,
Right.
whatever. I would envision that it'd probably be a team, a diversified team of different, you know, architects and engineers put together. You know, typically fees and design competitions range anywhere from $0 to hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on the scope. We've, you know, did some research, and we feel $10,000 would be probably the best price point for us to get the most value going forward.
And so what would be the total amount that you're going to put into the pot for that? I mean, $1 million?
I don't understand the question.
$10,000 per design team.
Right, and I
so
think we'd select up to 3 or 4.
So you're saying that could be $40,000 you budgeted for that, just the
Yeah.
design part. And then if their team, if they are chosen, then they would get more money?
Right, to organize the ideas going forward.
And as I think, did Brecky ask, or one of the counselors said, you know, what's the total cost of this? That would be, I guess, something we'd want to say to the public, is this is, we're before we start spending money on things, we should know what's going to be the budget for this project. Which brings me to the next thing I want to ask is, and I don't want to be the negative Nelly here, but I hear people say all the time what a fabulous experience going to the falls is. We've invested a lot of money in the falls itself, the surrounding area in that park. So my question would be, are you thinking of doing a total remake of it? I mean, what's needing to be fixed here?
Well, let me answer your first question. So we have a current master planning project that's approved, and that was approved for $50,000 for the master plan. And typically, we'll spend in the neighborhood of $50,000 to $70,000 on a park master plan the size of a large community park, right? As far as what happens with the plan going forward, basically what we've identified as Falls Park is, in my opinion, the best natural experience in the city of Sioux Falls. The falls are spectacular, obviously. We would hope that any designs going forward would enhance the user's experience, take into those natural features, those physical features, the programming opportunities that are there, and really design to expand upon them and make them better.
And I guess, I think it would be beneficial to, if I was on the council moving forward, I'd probably want to get a little more information about what you're trying to make better. Widen the bike, I mean, are there some specifics that we're having a concern about? And I know, and we're also right on the back of spending 8 to 10 million on the River Greenway expansion along the Sioux Steel area. So how much money are we going to be end up spending on the Falls Park?
So a couple of just items that we've talked about in the past are obviously the sidewalk network in Falls Park is too small. They were just built 20 years ago, and use of Falls Park is wildly more popular than originally anticipated in 2000. So expanding the sidewalk network and connections throughout the park would be something that I would envision would be addressed with this master plan. Also, a lot of the infrastructure like the tower and the visitor center and all that, it's small and it just doesn't meet the capacity, the use of the park. The bridge that connects Falls Park East to Falls Park proper, I mean, you can't even pass by a person without scooting to the side. So addressing some of those items would be a part of it, but also as Sioux Falls grows and the downtown develops, we hope that we can encourage new development in the park to accommodate those additional uses as the neighborhoods change around it. You know, when Falls Park was built, there wasn't this many residents downtown. Now really Falls Park serves as a neighborhood park for a lot of the downtown residents. So taking that into account would be one criteria that I would hope would be addressed with this master plan. So items like that.
But yeah, I think there's probably more discussion to happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just have one follow-up.
Councilor Erickson.
Just one follow-up. When we talked about the $10,000 amount, every single person that submits isn't getting $10,000. It's only if you're selected. So
Chosen, correct.
yes, okay. I just wanted to make sure that was very clear because that's the way I heard it too, and I didn't want all of the sudden.
If it was that way, I would be submitting also.
I can understand that everybody would.
Just the chosen.
Thank you.
Councilor Starr.
The discussion kind of got me to thinking about it. So do we look at Falls Park as a neighborhood park then, or are we looking at it as a tourist attraction? Or combining, how do you combine those two competing? I guess that's what the master plan's for.
Well, my answer to your question would be yes, as far as how it serves the community. It's a regional park, right? So it draws people from our community as well as people from the surrounding communities. And I don't even remember how many different states and countries signed in at the visitor's guest book. So I mean, it's a tourist stop all summer long. It holds multiple special events. It's day to day. People come to visit, enjoy, the fall. But then in addition to that, it also serves as a neighborhood park if you live across the street, right? So it provides that open space and that recreational opportunity for downtown residents as well. So it's really, I mean, it's our main park. It's our central park of Sioux Falls.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We will ask if there is any public input on either of the topics today. And if not, we will adjourn and see you at 7 o'clock. Thank you.